With rumors swirling about the Nintendo Switch 2 dropping sometime in 2024, I wanted to go over 25 big RPGs that we could see in the first year or so of the Nintendo Switch 2's life. Now, the word on the street is that a lot of developers do have dev kits, and many of them are prepping their games to release. And with the massive success of the Nintendo Switch selling 130 million units plus, a lot of developers are absolutely positive going into the Nintendo Switch 2, which was a bit different from the standard Nintendo Switch, where all we really had was Zelda at the launch, and then later the third-party developers came in. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into the top 25 here that we could see. Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and I'm counting all of the games here: Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, and Mass Effect 3, all in one awesome package. This is by far, to me at least, the best Western-based RPG that I have ever played, and I know that might be a little bit controversial, but it absolutely is incredible. I love the tone, the style, the setting, the story, the gameplay. Everything just ramps up and gets better and better as you play through the games. The Legendary Edition update includes all of the DLC in addition to updated graphics, better frame rates as well. Now, that might be a little bit tough to do on the Nintendo Switch, but I could see EA doing it for the Nintendo Switch 2, especially since their newest FIFA game, or I guess it's now FC, their soccer game, is using the Frostbite engine for the first time in the whole generation of the Switch. They're moving things over and getting ready. Before we get into the rest of the list, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell if you're enjoying these videos and want to see more Nintendo Switch and RPG content. Now let's go ahead and get right back into it. Next up is Persona 3 Reload. Many people were confused and upset that Persona 3 Reload wasn't coming to the standard Nintendo Switch, but I think I have a little bit of a reason why that's the case. Well, the Nintendo Switch 2, and on top of that, Persona 5 Royal is selling incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch, and it's looking, based on what I've heard, that Persona 5 Royal has crossed the million threshold on the platform, so it's still selling well. So maybe ATLUS wants to sell more of that, and then when they have a more capable system with the Nintendo Switch 2, they can port over Persona 3 Reload on Unreal Engine 4 more easily. Now, that could not be the case, but I do think that is part of it, because we all know Persona sells incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch based off the MPD and based off what we've seen on the eShop as well. So I would expect Persona 3 Reload to be on the Nintendo Switch 2 within its first year, similar to other ports that came over to the Switch after the fact, like Catherine, for example. But speaking of ATLUS, let's get into Metaphor ReFantazio, which I hope I'm saying that name right. This is the next big RPG from the Persona team. It's got a lot of that style, but it definitely looks incredibly weird. It looks far weirder than what you're used to with Persona, but I like what they're going for right now. Now, the game is not finished. It's a little bit rough in the first trailer, but this game has had a very troubled development period, and I think that by the time that it releases, it will be polished up to a level that we are used to when it comes to Persona. So I expect Metaphor ReFantazio to be a great game and also somehow make its way onto the Nintendo Switch 2 in the future. Next up is Scarlet Nexus. This is a action RPG from Bandai Namco, and it's a very good one. Solid reviews, it's got great controls, it's got cool powers. The story's a little cliched here and there, but it's still enjoyable, and you can play it from two perspectives. So you get two different perspectives, so that gives you extra replay value as well. And I really enjoyed my time with it on the PlayStation 5. I think that since games like Astral Chain did incredible on the platform, other titles like Scarlet Nexus could do just as good, especially considering this type of game and how Nintendo fans have been very positive towards these action games, action RPGs. We know what the Bayonetta series has done on the Switch, with all 3 Bayonetta games crossing 1 million plus units sold. So I would expect Scarlet Nexus to get a late port on the Nintendo Switch 2 in the future. But moving on to another Bandai Namco game, Tales of Arise, another title that did incredibly well on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, sold good in addition to reviewing high out there. So I expect Tales of Arise to be on the Nintendo Switch 2. We know that Tales of Vesperia was a great seller on the Nintendo Switch standard, but maybe the game might just be a bit too tough to port over, or Nintendo's advising some of these developers, hey, don't waste your time in terms of porting over when this new system is coming. Now, Bandai Namco is absolutely a key partner for Nintendo. Remember, guys, they helped develop Super Smash Bros. And have multiple games on the platform, with a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, that game selling over 2 million plus copies on the Switch. So Nintendo and Bandai Namco have a very strong relationship, and that report about developers having dev kits with key partners, Bandai Namco is absolutely one of those key partners. So I would expect Tales of Arise to be there either at launch, near launch, or within the first year. But speaking of another big RPG series, let's talk about Monster Hunter Rise. This is a game that's already on the standard Nintendo Switch, and I'm pretty sure there will be backwards compatibility to where you can play a game that you already have on your Switch. But I'm talking about here games that could be updated as well. We're not just talking about games that were never ported over, but also games updated and brought to Nintendo Switch. So like we've seen with the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, or the Xbox One to the Xbox Series, how some games get updates and put out on there. And one example of this is the fact that Monster Hunter Rise already has a higher end version on PlayStation and Xbox systems that they could essentially update and adapt for the Nintendo Switch 2. And it would be super sweet is if you already have Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch and you get a free update. That would be awesome. It would get people to buy the cartridge. I mean, there could be a lot of things that you can do there with Monster Hunter Rise. And maybe even Monster Hunter World comes over, or the next major Monster Hunter game. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But speaking of waiting and seeing, let's talk about Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring, all games, at least with Dark Souls 2 and 3, that were rumored to come to the Nintendo Switch. Now, we do have confirmed sales numbers that Dark Souls 1, the remaster game, sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch, and it had an amiibo. So obviously From Software, or at least From Software, is aware that there is a base of fans that want the Dark Souls or the Souls experience on a Nintendo platform. That was very successful for them. I think that essentially they're like, we can put 2 and 3 on there, but it'd probably be better just to wait with the more powerful system for better performance, because Dark Souls was a good port, but not necessarily the best port out there. Now, Elden Ring is also the question mark as well. I think that you can get way more sales with Elden Ring if you have a Switch port, because in Japan, that will be big. Elden Ring was already big in Japan just in general, but if you have a Switch 2 version of that, that will definitely get a lot more sales. And we saw what Dark Souls Remastered did with that 1 million plus on the Switch. So I would expect Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring at some point in the Nintendo Switch 2's life. Next up, we've got some Final Fantasy to talk about here, guys. Speaking of big RPGs, Final Fantasy XIV was recently revealed for the Xbox platform, which is going to greatly expand the player base and bring in a whole new revenue stream for Square Enix. Well, if you want to bring in another big revenue stream, because I think that the Switch 2 is going to do well, I think Final Fantasy XIV definitely makes it on the platform within the first year or so. There's multiple reasons to do this. One, of course, portable version. That'd be awesome if you have a strong enough internet connection. Obviously, in Japan, people definitely do, and some places here in the Western world do as well. But Final Fantasy XIV is one of those games to where if they really want to continue their dominance when it comes down to it, expanding to Xbox, expanding to the Switch 2 is going to dramatically increase the player base and make them way more money. The point is to get back to getting those big revenue streams across the board. And I think that's what their plan is going to be. and they've already started one part of that with getting Final Fantasy XIV on the Xbox platform, and I could see them expand again within the next number of years with the Switch 2, a more capable system than the standard Switch. But keeping on the Final Fantasy train here, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake, because this game was apparently supposed to be 1 year exclusive to PlayStation, and it's ended up being more than like 3 years exclusive console wise. It did come out on Epic, and I think it's on Steam, but I know it's on Epic, so PC, right? So that's great. But man, I think this game could do a lot better if there was a Switch 2 version or a portable version that people can play console-wise. The Switch 2 will be able to provide a stronger experience out there than the regular standard Switch. And we do know that Final Fantasy sells really good on Nintendo platforms. The classic games have sold really good with Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX, 10, 10-2, all that stuff. Square Enix has made a small fortune off of that. So there's absolutely a fan base of people who want Final Fantasy on a Nintendo platform, but the Switch 2 will be the platform that can actually deliver that. Now, this could all blow up in my face because Square Enix could still have some type of longer deal with Sony in order to have it be a exclusive to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 console-wise. But we'll see what happens in the future. It'll be 5 years or so after the release, 4 or 5 years plus after the release of the original Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I think maybe there is a time period where that exclusivity runs out. So we'll see what happens there. But one more Final Fantasy game to get into, and this is a game that they thought that was actually going to be on a Nintendo Switch. There were some rumors, but Final Fantasy 15. Now, this game, obviously, it's older. And it would be great if they brought over all the Final Fantasy games that they can, right? Final Fantasy 13 pretty much is only updated and been on the Xbox platforms, like with the Xbox Series X. You can still play them on the original PS3, PC if you want to play it on there, or the Xbox 360, but they look way nicer on the Xbox Series, the backwards compatibility and all that. It's really cool. I think that if they did that, right, Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, Lightning Returns, all of that, that would be great. A lot of work, but that would be really good and also revitalize the Final Fantasy brand a little bit more. Now, they're doing great with Final Fantasy 16, and people love the game. No shade here, but I think that bringing over Final Fantasy 15 and all of that content, which they wanted to do on the Switch, but the system and the Luminous engine just was having problems in terms of the power of the system, I think that this is the perfect opportunity, even though it's an old game, perfect opportunity to bring it over. We've seen other old games come over to Nintendo platforms and do well, like we talked about with the original Dark Souls, for example. So let's see these Final Fantasy games get done. But speaking of another RPG that needs to get done or hasn't happened in a while, and that is Yakuza Like a Dragon. Now, this game's interesting because SEGA has always had a little thing with the Yakuza games. It's like, no, we can't put them on Nintendo. The failure of what happened with the Wii U. We put Yakuza 1 and 2 and it didn't do so well, but that was the Wii U. Nobody really bought the Wii U in Japan. Nobody really bought the Wii U anywhere else. It only sold, what, less than 14 million systems. You got to put that game, especially with Yakuza Like a Dragon, a turn-based RPG, you got to put that game on a established platform, a brand that's going to do really well. Switch 2 is going to do really well based on Nintendo putting all of their developers on the platform. There's not going to be the droughts like we've gotten before. That was the issue with the Wii U. That was the issue with the GameCube. That's the issue that they've had before in the past. That has been solved now by combining your home console and your portable into one device. So I think that they can get some really good sales now with a game like Yakuza Like a Dragon on the Nintendo Switch 2, and you don't have to struggle with the port as much either. So we'll see what happens there. The game is really cool. People like it a lot. So I'll be interested to see if SEGA actually does that now at this point. An old port, if it works out well, you can make a lot of money off something that's already old at this point. Now let's talk about a game that was once again supposed to be on the Nintendo Switch and then never did, and that was Genshin Impact. I think that they ran into problems. Clearly, this game was announced multiple years ago at this point. People are still wondering, when is Genshin Impact coming to the Nintendo Switch? Well, I think it's safe to say maybe it's not at this point. Now, I could be wrong, right? We know that like games like Shin Megami Tensei 5 went radio silent for years and people wrote that game off, and then boom, it shows up at a Nintendo presentation and everything. So that could still happen here with Genshin Impact, but I think maybe they're just having some problems with the port of the game and they have their hands full with the Honkai Star Rail and other titles that they're working on and all the updates that you have to do, and maybe it just wasn't feasible for them to get it out on the Nintendo Switch in the quality that they would have wanted. Now they have it out on iOS and Android and stuff, but man, that game cooks your phone or your battery, man. Do not play that game mobile. I mean, play for like 5 seconds before it absolutely turns your phone into a ticking time bomb. But I do think that Genshin Impact and the Honkai Star Rail game could come over to the Nintendo Switch 2 if they like money. If they like money. And we all know they like money. I mean, they're doing all the gacha mobile type of stuff that's in these games. So Genshin Impact maybe gets just moved over to the next Switch. Now, next up is a personal favorite of mine, and I know a lot of you guys will like these as well, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, obviously, these could be backwards compatible with updates. That would be the most ideal thing. You still sell the original cartridge, you still download the same game, and then it just updates, just like the Xbox Series updates. You get better frame rates, you get better resolutions, everything is better within the game. Although that would take manpower, that would take them going back and updating it, but Monolith Soft is not necessarily opposed to doing something like that. They've patched their games before, they've increased their games before, they've done some pretty crazy things in order to get things working technically on the regular Nintendo Switch, and now you give them a more powerful system to work with their studios. I can see them getting a small group or a small team together and updating those games and releasing it and boosting the sales of both titles heading into the next generation that Nintendo has. So I think that would be a huge boost for one, Monolith Soft. Obviously more profit coming into the company because you update those games, people can go out there and buy them, but also it gives them work in terms of getting used to what the Switch 2 can do and everything, and it just brings over the franchise maybe to even more people at this point, because that's been one of the issues that people have with the Xenoblade franchise, is that it gets kind of blurry during combat, resolution isn't necessarily the best at all times. With the Switch 2, I think you can fix all of that and of course put your game out there in a bit of a better light. So I hope that that happens. Xenoblade 2 and 3 would be lit. I think I'd replay them again because I just love those games so much. Now, next up is a game that I don't necessarily love so much, but I think is going to get an update on the Nintendo Switch 2, and that is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Complete Edition. Now, the update kind of already launched on there, but they didn't really get, at least the Nintendo Switch didn't get like the real next-gen update that the PlayStation 5 and I think the Xbox Series got. I think that they could update this game because they've been very willing to really make sure that the Switch version is good. They've updated, they've done the best that they could with what the Switch is possible of, with the resources that they have. But I think that with the Switch 2, I think we'll see another update to where you see this game and it gets a bit better. When it comes to the graphics, resolution, and frame rate, I think things do get bumped up because I think the Switch 2 is going to be able to do a few things that people didn't expect to make sure that things run smoothly on the platform, whether you're playing in handheld mode or docked mode, which there could be some extra stuff there with DLSS. So I'm thinking that The Witcher 3, out of all these games on this list, Witcher 3 might have the best opportunity with that. So we'll have to wait and see on there. Next up is Shin Megami Tensei 5. Now, this game already sold over 1.1 million units. It is the best-selling Shin Megami Tensei game of all time, and I think they did that in like less than 6 months. It was like 5 months, it was already the top selling game, million plus sold. So that's obviously a good thing. There's a lot of money coming into the SMT franchise that was never there before in the past. Now, yes, they spent more on the game when it comes to marketing and the graphics at Unreal Engine 4, HD. Clearly that was the case, but they also reaped more of that. And the game itself, when it comes down to it, you can tell that they didn't really spend a ton when it comes like to the big budget AAA type of stuff with the game. They don't have the voice actors and all the different marketing and all the different stuff that you would do to spend money on certain stuff. I think it was probably way less than what they did even for Persona 5 back when that released. So I do feel that an update for SMT5 to smooth out that frame rate, to make the graphics a bit better, resolution and everything, make things run smoother in Unreal Engine is absolutely possible. And you bundle in all of that DLC, just call it SMT5 Complete Edition, SMT5 Game of the Year Edition, SMT5 Royal. I don't care what you call it, but I think that they could do something along the lines of that. Plus, there's been rumors of a PlayStation 4 and PC version of this game based off of the Nvidia leak. I think that if you launch it all at the same time, that's a huge push. PlayStation 4, PC, and the Nintendo Switch 2, that would be great. And I think that you could pick up hundreds of thousands of sales right there based off of that. Whether people are buying the cartridge and updating, buying a new cartridge that comes out, if they want to just put everything right there, or buying the game on PlayStation or PC. So I think that would be a great idea. I love me some SMT5. But you know what else I also love? Octopath Traveler 2. And I think that an update for this game to get it on par with what we saw with the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 would be really good, considering Octopath Traveler 2 absolutely sold best on the Nintendo platform. So if you get a better experience on there, you get a cheaper price point with the $39.99 that we're seeing the game for, or $40, and it'll probably be cheaper even then. I think that you see a slew, like a large swath of people flock back to this game when it comes to Octopath Traveler, because Octopath Traveler 2, to me, it still has room to grow. It still has room to get more people to play the game. A lot of people played the first game and not as many people bought the second one because it was stacked when it comes to the competition surrounding the game. But once it hit that $40 price point, people started to pick it up more. So if it's $30 by the time that this next Switch comes out brand new and you do an update for it, I think that Switch 2 people are absolutely going to pick up the game because it's a high quality RPG. So I'm looking forward to seeing if they do that and update it to the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 version with the Switch 2. But next up is another HD 2D game, Team Asano Triangle Strategy, which was interesting because this game got an update on the standard Nintendo Switch to where they added in some extra content and they did more quality of life features. This game sold really well, over 1 million units, over 800,000 units on the Switch by itself within the first 3 weeks or so. Square Enix was incredibly happy with the sales, which is hard to come by when it comes to Square Enix, but they were very happy with it because it's a low investment, but it's a high reward. Remember, this game's $60. It's not like they're charging, $30 at launch for these HD 2D games. They're charging $60 for them. And yes, they're expensive to develop, but they're not as expensive as the highest price games on the market, like the Kingdom Hearts for Square Enix, or like the Dragon Quest games, for example. So I think that Triangle Strategy has a lot of clout. It's got a lot of room to grow as well. And if they update that to 60 frames, 1080p, or 1440p on the Switch 2, bundle in everything there, right? You have that update, everything's on there, and complete Triangle Strategy as a game that was already over 1 million on the Switch could definitely tack on a bunch more sales with a nice updated version on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, speaking of a game that already got a really nice updated version, but I think that could make some more waves, Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. There is a incredible PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, actually PlayStation 5 version of this game that is just great. It runs like at 120 frames per second. Not sure if Switch 2 will be able to do that, but if they were able to get a better version of the game out, remember, Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana sold incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch. It was actually probably the turning point for Nihon Falcom to say, okay, Switch is a real thing that we have to pay attention to. They were surprised and somewhat shocked by the sales of Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana on the Nintendo Switch, because you have to remember, by the time that game came out, it wasn't like the Switch had 100 million units sold and all these third-party games were selling like crazy. They were still very skeptical on the Nintendo Switch, so they were seeing what was going to happen, and it ended up blowing up and being a very good game for them. So I do think that an updated version of Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana could happen on the Nintendo Switch 2. It'd be great if you can just download it, or you can buy it separately like the PlayStation 5 version was, and I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how they do that, because remember, there's multiple ways of doing this. Developers can have updates, backwards compatibility if they want to do it that way, but then they can also just make another version if they feel like it. We saw that with Persona 5 Royal on the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5. They did not just update the game and say, hey, here's the update for the PS5. They made a whole separate version, despite there being updates for other games in PlayStation 4 working just fine when it comes to updating PS5. Obviously not as smooth as what Xbox does, but it's still something that's a thing that many developers have done. So I do think that we could see some stuff like that. Not everybody, but some stuff like that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next game here, guys, and that is Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. Now, I think that Monster Hunter Stories 2, obviously big success, over 1 million units sold on the Nintendo Switch, so very good there, and for a spin-off type of game, I think that it did well. However, I think that if this game could do a little bit more when it comes to the open-ended world and kind of like the frame rate and resolution and stuff for what Switch owners were getting, I think that it could have another life, if not another game in the series. Clearly they're making money. Heck, they made a sequel with the Nintendo 3DS game that necessarily didn't sell crazy, but sold just well enough to greenlight this AA type of game. And obviously this game, from what I understand, doubled up plus on what the 3DS game did. So they've been getting better and better. So if they bring over this with an update and then get primed and ready for the next Monster Hunter Stories 3, that could be a great way to introduce people to the franchise, introduce people to the turn-based gameplay, and also get a better experience as well. So maybe we see that within the first year of the Switch 2's launch. Now, next up is something that is going to be very funny because of how everything's played out, but Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, there's been big rumors that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is going to get some type of big next-gen patch for the Switch 2, which in that rumor roundup, which I did cover on the channel, but in that roundup, that person actually got correct information on various different things with the DLC and with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that nobody knew at the time that he posted it and was revealed to be the truth. So there has been some talk and some, hey, this was not right with what he said, but it's kind of undisputable in terms of what he got right. And that Pokemon patch was in there. Now, I'm still wanting Game Freak. We're not letting them off the hook. I still want Game Freak to make sure that they patch things up just a bit on the Nintendo Switch, the base Switch, with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because they did patch up a lot of the bugs and the glitches and the issues. That's been patched up, but the performance still needs to be better. So with this DLC coming out, they're selling this DLC before they have that patch out. In terms of things, let's see what they do, because it could come there. We have to wait and see. Nintendo doesn't announce the patches beforehand or anything, and they don't even put them in the patch notes. For example, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom all got performance patches and updates. Nintendo never specifically said that beforehand or even in the patch notes. So we'll see what happens there. But if not, we do also have potentially this rumor with Scarlet and Violet with the Nintendo Switch 2. Whether it's just done through backwards compatibility or whether it's something they specifically update, we just don't know. But either way, the game needs better performance across the board. Now, last but definitely not least is a game that I want to talk about a lot, and that is Astral Chain. Yes, this game is absolutely incredible. One of the best Nintendo Switch games of all time. One of my favorite games of all time. And Astral Chain is one of those titles to where it's really optimized for the standard Nintendo Switch. But if you had a Switch 2 version of the game that ran at higher resolution and higher frame rate and everything, I think that once again, you can take that excitement and take that passion and bring it to a new audience that didn't buy the game. Now, what we do know is that when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, Astral Chain is the best selling Platinum Games title on the platform. It's Astral Chain. Bayonetta 1, Bayonetta 2, and Bayonetta 3 have sold good. They've sold really good, over 1 million plus units, but Astral Chain is the best selling one. So think about what you can do and the potential for that franchise to grow even more. One, you bring it to a new audience that maybe didn't check it out, or you just get it back out there. Two, you improve the game quite a bit. And three, you set up what they're going to do next, because the developer did say, Mr. Tura-san did say that they have some ideas for a trilogy. And the ending of the game plus the game itself leaves a lot to be interpreted in terms of what happens next. Doesn't have the greatest story ever. It's not going to win story of the year, but I do think that the story can go places and the game can get better. So I'm looking forward to seeing if they do any updates with Astral Chain. Now, Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2, both of those games got updated on the Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, the Switch isn't backwards compatible with the Wii U, but the versions of those games that came out on the Switch were absolutely better than the versions that came out on the Wii U, frame rate wise. So I think that we could see something like that, like an update or a version for the Switch 2 that definitely improves the frame rate and improves the resolution and makes things a bit sharper. Now, there's no need for DLC because the game doesn't have any DLC. All the DLC is already packed in. Once you beat the game, a bunch of other stuff opens up. Plus, there's a ton of replay value in this game. It's easily one of the best values that I can say. So yes, go out there and buy Astral Chain right now, but at the same time, you never know if they're going to do a free update or what they're going to do in the future. It's absolutely possible because Nintendo wants to have a strong lineup of games in that first year and having updates for a lot of these titles that we talked about, whether it's games like Monster Hunter Rise or Xenoblade Chronicles or Shin Megami Tensei, Octopath, Astral Chain. It's going to be a huge thing for them to help bolster whatever they do absolutely new as well, whether that's a big 3D Mario game, whether that's a Mario Kart game, Donkey Kong, whatever else they've got cooking up for the first year and rollout of titles. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think that a lot of these games would be good candidates. They're all possible big RPGs to come to the Nintendo Switch 2. What other titles would you like to see? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out our other videos right here on screen. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.